Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to continue our discussion of early Christian and Byzantine art. I'm going to start off talking about the early Christian art in Ravenna, and then we're going to switch, and I'm going to finish up today talking about Byzantine art. So you'll notice there's two different PowerPoints on your course page, and so there's two videos that I'm going to make today. Now, we've already seen in the previous talks, and you can just imagine how much political and religious turmoil there was during the centuries right after the death of Jesus. And really, the whole history of the end of the Roman Empire is rocky and complicated. And this is not a history class, so we only touch on a little bit of it, but it's pertinent to the study of art, as you'll see. When we say early Christian, it's really more of a historical term than a reference to style in terms of the art. Christians are just beginning to find their feet in their style, and much of the stylistic differences are cultural and geographical and depend very much on where they are. So when we say early Christian, we're talking about both the first 5 centuries CE, Common Era, and the works of art that are made during that period. And Ravenna is very important for both early Christian and Byzantine art, which we're going to look at a little bit later today, because it is easy to get to by sea right to Constantinople. So it's a trade center. And as you'll see moving forward, trade is vital to commerce. And when a culture or a society or a group is doing well financially, they are able to afford art. So it's pertinent to us. So here's a little bit of history for you. In the year 395 CE, or Common Era, Theodosius I, and now you just got to remember that we still have the Roman Empire going on. Christianity has started, but we've got the Roman Empire, and we have persecution of Christians. It's illegal to be Christian, but that happens for 300 years or so. And as we saw last time with Constantine, Christianity became legalized, but just because it's legalized doesn't mean everybody suddenly turned Christian. And it also didn't mean that everybody accepted Christians. So there's still all kinds of arguments and different factions. And in addition, we begin having these waves of invaders from the north again, from Gothic invaders with Vikings. So by about 60 years or so after 395, so you can do the math, the Emperor Theodosius I split the Roman Empire in Western and Eastern divisions, and it's interesting to read about. But for us, we just want to sort of look at this timeline. He had a son, or one of many, Honorius, who moved the capital of the Western Empire to Ravenna because the Germanic settlers are attacking Rome. And then in 410 CE, then in 410, Rome is sacked by the Visigoths, and Ravenna becomes the seat of the Western Empire. And again, it's a central trade location. So Honorius dies in 423, and so his half-sister, Galla Placidia, ruled from 425-440 CE, and she's a very interesting character. She was a builder also, and many ambitious projects started under her rule. So this is just one of many projects, and the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia is what we're going to look at now. There's many buildings at Ravenna, both from early Christian and Byzantine. They're all decorated with just incredible Roman mosaics, and there's a really good description in your text about the mosaic process. So here is the Mausoleum of Galla Placidia in Ravenna. She built lots of buildings, but this is a very important one, and it's so beautiful. It's intact today, just as she made it. And a mausoleum, of course, is where the dead are kept. And she's, as I've said, she was pretty interesting. She was kidnapped by Alaric the Goth in 410, and I gave you that short, brief history of the sacking of Rome. She married a Goth king. He died 5 years later but she had a son, and her son was named Valerian III. So when Alaric the Goth died, her son was made the emperor, and she became a regent, and she ruled as an empress from 425 to 450. Now, she was a very pious Christian, and it's a wonderful thing to think about that at this time in history that Christians and people from other religions were coexisting. So everyone that entered this mausoleum may or may not have been Christian, but she was. And the artwork in this building transports you to another world by its beauty. The construction is the Greek cross plan. It's a central plan building. And so you can see the four arms of the cross here. And then each arm inside, there's a barrel vault. And you notice this is very, very austere, very simple on the outside. And much of early Christian architecture is this way, that the decoration on the outside isn't what's important. It's what's inside. It's the world within. So it's really interesting that this is made out of reused Roman bricks. And so many of these builders just took other buildings apart to make new ones. It was all repurposed. And this was probably built out of the bricks from a Roman bath. On the outside, we see these blind arcades. That's what it looks as though somebody bricked up the windows, but that's actually an ornament. It's ornamental arches just applied to solid walls. There's no functional purpose to these at all. And so here's the inside, and it's hard to see from this slide. I think I've included some links, and I encourage you to look this up on your own, see if you can find some videos of this, because these mosaics right now are as beautiful as they were when they were made, and they're all lined with solid gold tesserae. Tesserae is the word for every little piece of a mosaic. So as the light comes in, it all lights up and sparkles and glitters. It's designed to simulate a passage from the real world into a supernatural one. So this up here, the inside of the interior dome is all a deep dark blue. But this gives you a sense of the structure. And so you can see here the lunette with the decoration. This particular one is St. Lawrence, and then the caskets all around. Here's another view of the same thing from a little bit farther away. It's very, very small, this mausoleum. And so you can see that there's just 4 of these arms. You're standing in the center. You can look to the right and the left and see this decoration. And if you notice the decoration on the insides of these arches, is very similar to Roman ornamental vines and things like that we find on items like the Arapakis. So and as you can see here, it's a big contrast with the exterior. So light comes in, lights up all this mosaic, and the light symbolizes God. So this is going to be a theme throughout, is that these church interiors mingle light and pure color. So it just creates this mystical experience of an otherworldly realm. Lots of times they'll have precious stones, gems, and solid gold, particularly in this case. So it all adds to this mystical experience. This particular image is 2 apostles up above in St. Lawrence. And you can notice here, if you remember back to our friend Aulus Metellus and how he lifted his hand, and these are all wearing this Roman garb, and they're lifting their hands just as Roman statesmen do. And we see 2 doves here on either side of this fountain. That's a symbol of Christian souls drinking the water of eternal life. And you can see all this vine decoration, very stylized. So what is St. Lawrence doing? He's standing next to this iron bed or iron frame full of flames. Over here, there's an open cabinet. He's carrying a cross. This mausoleum is dedicated to St. Lawrence. And the story I'm going to give you here is a widely accepted one. There is some controversy. There are some scholars that think this is a different saint. But the story of St. Lawrence is that he refused to turn money for the poor over to Roman authorities, and we do have historical records that the way he was martyred was on being roasted alive on a gridiron bed, which was a common way to martyrize saints. Rather grisly, but one thing about martyrs is they're baptized in their own blood. So because of this, they all will have a place in heaven without punishment. And this aspect of the Christian religion, they believe that there has to be some sort of punishment, whether it's purgatory or some type of cleansing, or that the soul has to go through some kind of trial or tribulation in order to get a place in heaven. You have to earn it. So they earn their place in heaven by being martyred. They also later on become patron saints of professional guilds, different kinds of artist guilds or builders. So St. Lawrence becomes the patron saint of bakers, which is interesting to think about in its own way. Anyway, here we see this bookcase, and the bookcase has the 4 Gospels in it. And again, there are better images out there available of this. It's a little bit blurry, but the inside this cabinet, the names of the Gospels are very, very clear. And now, some Christian traditions forbid images of people. So sometimes, just as a footnote, St. Lawrence is depicted, for example, just by an image of the bed. But here we see both St. Lawrence and the gridiron bed. And if you notice, this is a hallmark of the early Christian style, these very bold outlines. And he does have very big eyes and very frontal expression. You can sort of see that style better in this one. St. Lawrence is done in the same style as this. Now, this image is a quintessential image from early Christian art, and one of the last ones I want to leave you with is Christ of the Good Shepherd. And you can see here a little bit better view of this beautiful ceiling, and here is Christ surrounded by his sheep holding the crook. So, in comparison to that 4th century image that we looked at in the last lecture, if you remember, painted, and I have another slide in a minute, it was very scratchily painted by those grave diggers. Here, Christianity is legal. Galla Placidia is honoring Christ. So it's done with gold, with modeling in the style that, has been known for centuries. Here he's wearing imperial robes. He's wearing a halo. So he has moved from shepherd boy to king. So there's classical elements in this Revenna mosaic that we don't see in this early 4th century version of the same subject. Here's some details of the mosaic. So all of these sort of yellowish looking bits are all solid gold, and all of these little tiles are outlined with gold. Here Christ has his hand on the lamb. Look at the detailing in the feet and the sandal. And again, this dark outline, very solid frontal face, large halo, darkly wide eyes, darkly outlined. These are going to be carried forward into the Byzantine style. Here's a detail of a lamb. And in this, you can just see how incredible this mosaic work is. Here's another building from Ravenna. This is called the Baptistry of the Orthodox. It's one of the oldest buildings in Ravenna. And again, it was built on the site of a Roman bath with reused bricks. And it's relatively small. It's only 37 feet across. But a baptistry, of course, is, as its name implies, a place where baptisms are conducted. So you'll see, and I think we're going to see a little later on at the end of this semester an example of that inconsistency at Pisa, where we see a baptistry and then the cathedral and then the campanile top tower all create one image, but 3 separate buildings. So this is a hallmark of Italian architecture. Here's the inside of the Baptistry of the Orthodox. So again, very plain exterior, very beautifully decorated mosaics on the inside. All of these empty thrones around the bottom represent the thrones that await Christ's second coming. So Ravenna was a site of early dispute in the Christian church, and so there were different thoughts about different things in Ravenna, and Western and Eastern churches clashed somewhat. But here we have a central image of the baptism of Jesus, and in the lowest ring, it's all temple, so in other words, it's all paintings that look as though they're architecture, but it's just painted architecture. And there's landscape image here. You can see classical roots here. Representation of the Jordan River. It's showing pagan imagery. So there's a syncretism of many different styles in this baptistry. Here is the page with the Ascension. I don't want to leave this discussion of early Christian art without looking at some manuscripts. Here we have a mandorla that's been transformed from a cloud. There's two angels holding it up, and Christ, of course, inside the mandorla. And the Virgin Mary down here is actually in the orant pose. So that means she's called God-bearer. And cults of Mary will emerge where they worship Mary as the God-bearer. But in this particular instance, she's a representation of the Christian community on earth, where here Christ in the mandorla is representing the Christian community in heaven.